Adam Katz for the Hardcore Camping Gear channel, the channel where we explore and review the camping gear that you need to be self-contained, self-reliant, and most of all comfortable camping in the outdoors. I feel like this is not in frame. Hey guys, Adam Katz for the Hardcore Camping Gear channel, the channel where we explore the camping gear that you need to be self-contained, self-reliant, and most of all comfortable camping in the outdoors without having to spend tens of thousands of dollars on an expensive RV or travel trailer. In this episode, I wanted to do kind of an after-action report on my experience testing out my camping gear, basically in negative, originally in negative 5 degrees Celsius, which was, I think, 24 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 5 degrees Celsius. That was covered in the last video. The day after I recorded that video, I did it again in I think it got down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 10 degrees Celsius. And very interesting takeaways. I wanted to share it with you. And then in successive videos, I'll cover some of the changes that I'm making. So if you remember, what I was doing to prepare for that second night when the temperature was going to drop down even more was I used 2 of the Thermarest pads underneath my sleep pad on the Coleman cot. And then I used 2 of the military sleeping bags. The one was the intermediate US bag and the other one was the intermediate British bag. And I ended up putting the US bag, if I remember correctly, inside the British bag. Here's what I found. What I found is that I need to completely start over from scratch with my sleep system, because while I wasn't as cold with the 2 sleeping bags, cold wasn't really so much of an issue when I was in the bag per se, but it was simply just not comfortable. And I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've come to the conclusion that the cot, while I do like the fact that it's got the springs that give it a little bit of a bounce, but it's so narrow, it's just not comfortable. You're constantly in the back of your mind while you are sleeping, you're worried about falling off the edge of it. So I've decided that I'm going to get a bigger cot. I actually have since got a bigger cot, and I'll get into that in a minute. The other problem is that with the 2 sleeping bags, one inside the other, I mean, it is a workable solution to survive really cold temperatures, and probably that combination of the 2 intermediate military bags would have been enough to have gotten much colder. The problem is this: the British bag zips up in the middle, the American bag zips up and down from the side, and so you've got a disparity between where the 2 zippers are. And because the military bags are set up so that you can pull them apart and it unzips, which generally speaking I like that feature. I like being able to get out of a sleeping bag really quick if I have to. But the problem was every time you moved, that top sleeping bag, the British one, would come open, and then you'd only have the insulation from the one sleeping bag. The other problem I found was that just with the 2 sleeping bags, it was very difficult to zip everything up and get everything enclosed. So I still had some cold air coming in around my neck, which I thought could be a little bit dangerous. Definitely, if you zip everything up, you'd be in the bag super tight. And I kind of remembered why I really don't like mummy bags, is because I can't sleep like this the whole night. You know, I like actually having my arms above the bag. I like, I sleep on both sides and on my back, and it just wasn't a comfortable solution. So even though I wasn't particularly cold like I had been when it was 24 degrees, and even though it was 14 degrees, which was, arguably 10 degrees colder more or less, it was just not a comfortable evening by any stretch of the imagination. And I walked away from the experience realizing that I need to make some changes to my gear. And that's really what this channel is about, is figuring out how to be comfortable camping in the outdoors. A lot of people that go camping, a couple times a year, and if it's not so comfortable, they just kind of suck it up. I didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to be the kind of guy that had the type of gear that I could go out, whether it's winter or summer or anything in between, and be really comfortable and know that I didn't have to worry about, freezing to death and catching hypothermia. So that was kind of one of the big takeaways. The other big takeaway is that when it gets that cold, you really need a heater. And I had the little buddy heater, and my idea was I would just use that when I had to get up in the middle of the night to, basically pee. That was a drag, because once you're warm inside the bag, you got to unzip the 2 bags, and then you got to get up, and it's cold. It was really, 14 degrees is really, really cold. And turning that heater, it just wasn't a good solution. It wasn't a comfortable solution. So here's how I've decided I'm going to remedy and change things up. You know, hopefully you're still with me after all this babbling. So number one, I've decided that I needed to get a bigger cot, and I ended up doing that. I ended up getting the Teton XXL cot that everybody online recommends, and I thought, you know what, chances are this is going to suck. Everybody says it doesn't sag. There is a little bit of a sag. I bought the thing though, and I love it despite the sag. And here's what I did. I took that 4-inch Milliard 3-panel mattress that I had bought, which I really didn't like. I didn't think was that comfortable. And I put it up, just that, without the other pads and the other stuff, just put that on top of the XXL cot. And although the width doesn't take up the entire area of the cot, you know, the mattress is maybe, I don't know, 3 inches on each side more narrow, it still was a much more comfortable experience. And I don't know if the little bit of sag from the cot compensated for the mattress, or if it's just that I've used the mattress half a dozen times at this point, and maybe it's starting to break in, or maybe I'm starting to get used to it. But the combination between the two was really, really nice. I'm going to do a separate video on that. So I really think I've got the cot plus mattress part of the equation figured out. In addition to that, I was reminded how much I hate mummy bags. I hate doing this all night and not being able to turn over or be like this. So I ended up ordering a sleeping bag from Kodiak Canvas, the people who make the Kodiak tents, and got it already. Haven't tested it outside. That's coming up this weekend, but tested it just in the house a couple nights, sleeping on the cot. Fantastic, really, really comfortable. It's square, but it has an innovative feature where on top it keeps all of the heat in. It's kind of like almost like a pullover gaiter with an apron on top, and so it takes a square sleeping bag, and it prevents the downfall of most square sleeping bags is that all the heat comes out of the top, and so this addresses that issue. And the materials were just very, very comfortable. So I'm really excited to test that out this weekend in a couple of days when the weather's going to be still cold, and see how that setup works with the XXL cot. So pretty cool. The other thing that I think ultimately I'm probably going to have to do is I'm going to have to use a 25-pound propane tank with an extension hose to run that in, keep the propane tank outside, run that hose inside to the Mr. Buddy heater, and just keep that on a low setting the entire night. And that way, you know, hopefully the ambient temperature within the tent will stay around, you know, I'd be pretty comfortable around 50 or so, 40, 50, somewhere in that ballpark, rather than waking up in the middle of the night at 14 degrees. I did a little bit of research, and if you look at a lot of other YouTubers, guys like Steve Wallace, typically when it gets really cold, most of the time he's going out there with a heater, and if he's in his little igloo tent, he's using that same type of a setup, like a catalytic heater or a Mr. Buddy heater connected to a 25-pound propane tank. So I'm thinking that's probably what I'm going to have to end up doing to really be comfortable. But I want to try the new sleeping bag and cot setup without the heater attached to the 25-pound tank first, just to see how it does, just because I'm curious, and you know, hope to be a little bit more comfortable than I was with this last experiment. The other big takeaway is that Kelty tent worked really well in terms of keeping me, you know, basically dry and sheltering me from the wind. But I've come to the realization that at this age, at this stage in my life, I'm 50, I need a tent that I can actually stand up in. It's just that added bit of comfort is just absolutely worth it. So I'm going to switch back to the Gazelle tent. Any tent I do buy going forward is going to have to be a tent where I can actually stand up in, because that additional amount of comfort is really just worth it. Quiet. No, quiet. No, come here. Come here. Come here. I don't know if you guys could hear this young man here. Come here. Jump. Jump. This guy here, I don't know if you can see him, but this guy was just barking. He was like, throw the ball for me. So I'm gonna throw the ball. Now you can leave us alone. So anyways, that's kind of my take, my wrap up. If you haven't yet, and if you like this kind of content, seeing some crazy old man camping out in his backyard testing his camping gear, please consider subscribing, hit the notification bell, like, share, comment, do all that kind of stuff. You know how to do it. But that way you're going to be the first to know when we come out with new content, because I want to go through each of these things and kind of review them and let you guys know what I think in terms of how well they work to keep me comfortable and make the entire camping experience more enjoyable. Talk to you soon, guys.